Welcome to Women's Leadership Today, presented by Progressive Women's Leadership. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Nikolette. We're bringing you the latest in leadership development and expertise. Every month at Progressive Women's Leadership, we have a different theme. July's theme is grit.
Yeah, this one I'm really excited to share. Grit is made up of two parts if you really think about it. It's passion and perseverance. This is the combination that allows you to push through failure and dig in deep when things get tough.
Yes, it's important to know that grit is not an inherent trait. It's something that grows and fades depending on the situation. That first part, passion, plays a big role in bringing out our grit. If you're passionate about something, you're more likely to persevere. But it can play the other way too. The more driven you are to persevere through your struggles, the more passionate, the more vested you are in the outcome.
Yeah, and when I think of grit in my personal life, I think of when I first started hiking. And some of those hikes were tough, and I would go with friends that were much more experienced than I was at the time, for sure. I'd be tired and I'd be hot, and I'd really be spending most of the time thinking about, should I turn around and just go wait for them back at the car? But I'd have to really dig in deep and push myself to keep going. And fortunately, I had great supportive friends as well. But really, it becomes, an internal struggle. And to me, this has always served as a good metaphor for digging in when things get tough, even at work or in personal life. And to me, you need to push through. And the great thing is, once you do persevere, then the next time you're in a similar situation, you can get through it because you've done it before. And so even today, I'm still an active hiker, and when I'm out there hiking and I'm feeling tired and feeling hot and run down, I just keep going. As long as it's safe, I keep going because I know I've done this before. I've done harder hikes than before. I've got this in me. And you can just really tap into that past, power and grit and perseverance that you have before.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely pushed through my fair share of trouble, and you're exactly right. I don't hike. I don't know if I could handle it physically, not maybe as strong as you are, but I've definitely, in my personal life, pushed through a lot of tough situations. Physically, emotionally. We all face situations that are really, really tough, and I feel like what you said is exactly true. It's almost like grit fuels grit. You know what I mean? When you have to push through in life and you're really passionate about something and you're really persevering, the next time you come across a situation that is difficult like that, you do try harder because you remember that those past situations where you pushed through, and you know that strength is there. However, there are really times where you just can't dig in any harder. You have to listen to yourself and know that there are times where there's just no pushing through. You're worn out. It's really important to recognize that as well, because you don't want to burn yourself out.
Yeah, definitely. And, Nancy Ems just did a workshop for us on grit. And she mentioned one thing I really like that she mentioned that I hadn't really thought of before. She mentioned that she finds grace to also be a key component in grit. And you need to give others and yourself the grace to fail, and not seeing something through. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. And it's often in our failures that we really learn the most. So while, yes, grit is important, it's that, like you said, that passion, that perseverance, digging in and getting the task done, sometimes we can't. And that can be okay. We have to have that grace with ourselves and for others.
Yes, absolutely. I think that grace is so important. And I found that really interesting too, because everything I've looked into on this topic and I've read about this topic over the month so far has really pushed on that passion and that perseverance, those two parts of it. But I think Nancy really hit the nail on the head when she was talking about grace. I've never considered myself to be a particularly gritty person, like inherently, but I've had my moments, like I said, those moments where I was really driven and I was really passionate about something, and so I pushed through, or I really loved something or someone, so I pushed through those tough times. And grace, I think that plays a huge, huge part in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
For example, most of our listeners won't know this, but I'm also a part-time dog trainer. That's a huge passion for me, and it hasn't always been the easiest journey to get there. It's not something I just woke up one day and was able to start doing, Actually, in high school, it started, I always knew from a very young age that I wanted to work with dogs. And first, I thought, the obvious, I was going to be a veterinarian. As I got further along in school, I recognized I wasn't very good in the sciences, especially anything that had to do with math. I actually failed out of pre-calculus 3 times. So I started to recognize that if I was going to go that direction, it was going to be a huge struggle. It was going to take a lot of effort on my part, and I just didn't know if it would be worth it. And it really took grace in that situation to tell myself, find a different path. Don't give up on your passion. This one thing isn't going to work out. Don't worry about it. Pick yourself up and keep trying. And the same thing, in high school, I said maybe I'll try dog grooming. I got into a dog grooming job where they were going to train me from the ground up. I didn't have to have any base knowledge, which was great because I didn't. Um, and it was an absolute struggle from beginning to end. When I tell you, day one, my supervisor was already giving me looks like, I don't think this girl can make it. And you hear all those stories, right, where people don't believe in you and you push through anyway and you're very gritty, you persevere. But I gotta tell you, I was agreeing with her. Every single day I came in for those 3 weeks that I lasted, and I'm telling you, it was only those 3 weeks, I was struggling. First of all, I wanted to spend too much time with the dogs. It's a very fast-paced environment. Second of all, my anxiety was just not, there was something about the environment, that fast pace, and just the dogs, a lot of dogs just don't enjoy it, and so my anxiety was on high end all the time. I was constantly having panic attacks. Finally, after 3 weeks, my supervisor pulled me aside and she was like, girl, listen, you've got the passion. I can tell you love the dogs, but this particular path, it is just not for you. And I was heartbroken because I didn't know what else I was going to do. I really didn't. I exhausted the vet. I exhausted the grooming. I was like, maybe dogs just aren't for me. But you know what? Again, that grace. I'll tell you what, that grace. I was heartbroken. I was very, very upset. But I had to tell myself it was going to be okay, right? This isn't for you. Not everyone can do everything. And I really had to forgive myself and pick myself up and keep going. And you know what, Michelle? I found dog training, and I was very, very good at it. I did a lot of self-research. I worked very hard. I even, went back to school to get my certification, and everything. It was a little bit tough because I was an adult at that point. I'm sure you know, and so it was a bit of a struggle. But I found dog training. I found something I was passionate about. The important part, and I think a lot of people would look at someone giving up on something like the grooming or the veterinarian that I really felt passionate about and think that must not be grit because she didn't persevere, she didn't push through. But that grace played a huge part. I never gave up on my passion. I was passionate about dogs and I kept forgiving myself. And because I kept forgiving myself instead of being hard on myself, because I kept showing myself that grace, I think that that's really what allowed me to be gritty, to keep pushing through and to pursue my passion. And I'm a trainer and I'm very, very happy with it. And I think that, like you said, like Nancy said, I think that component, grace, is an excellent, excellent addition to the definition of grit, for sure.
Absolutely.
What about you, Michelle?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love what you were saying, about grace, and that it's not about the path. Sometimes we get so focused on the path to get to where we want to go that we kind of blind ourselves to other opportunities or other paths that we might take. But yeah, I know when we were talking about this before, you were asking me, if I think of myself as a gritty person, and I was like, oh, I don't know. But when I did think about it, I think I would have to say, Yes, and because when I do set my mind to something, I do dig in and see it through. And, no matter what comes at me, from the left or the right, I get very determined and focused. And I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it done. Come hell or high
Yes,
water.
go.
And it, as we were talking, it reminded me of grad school. It had been my intent even while I was working on my undergraduate degree to go to grad school. But after working two jobs through college and going, taking a full load of classes plus an internship, going to school full time, I just didn't know if it was something that I could dig in and do again. But after working for a couple years, I went back to get my MBA, and of course, I was working, in a full time career job at that time, and had a full load of classes. Plus the time to study, and then you have your groups and your projects. And at the time, I was also planning my wedding. It was a little crazy. And my grandmother's health was failing at that time, and trying to fit in quality time with her as she was declining. It was really tough to do all that work full time, go to
Yeah.
school full time, you know. And more than once, I thought of putting it off, instead of pushing through to try to get it done in 2 years, maybe, take a hiatus. But I was determined. I went to get this done. So in the end, I wound up saying no to a lot of social engagements, lost a lot of sleep, but I stuck it
Yeah.
through and got it done. And plus, I finished in the top 10% of my class. So it was really, it was a personal goal of mine, and I felt it felt really good to get that done. And I met some amazing people throughout the program as well. But you know, um, yeah, it can be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. That is literally amazing, Michelle, that you were able to, despite everything you were going through, that you were able to push
Oh,
through,
thank
and you were
you.
able to achieve that goal that you set.
Appreciate it.
That's incredibly gritty. It really is very gritty. Um, I think it's so important to hear those stories, the stories like yours, and like
Oh
mine.
yeah,
I
I
don't
love
want
yours,
to
and
to be
I
very
come to you for
humble.
my dog training tips all the time. I love that passion.
Yes. Yes, the passion comes out. I think it's so important to hear other people's
Hmm.
stories and to be inspired. I think, despite the fact that grit can fuel grit, and that when we learn that we're stronger than we think we are, and we keep going in those situations, and that gives us power, I think hearing about other people being gritty and learning from them, being inspired by them, can really be just as important. It can help fuel that passion, that perseverance. Knowing what others have overcome can really fuel us to do the same. That I
Oh
think.
yeah, definitely. And uh, during the webinar on grit that Nancy led, I really like a couple of things that some of the participants on the webinar shared with us. One said, it was a quote I love. One said, "Grit is like being Clint Eastwood, sticking to your guns." I thought that was really clever. But one story one of the other participants shared was how she was cut from her college softball team, and that had been her dream. And but she wasn't going to let that stand in the way. So she got back on the team as a walk on, and then she went on later to become the team captain. I love that story. I thought that was a great example of grit and perseverance, and you could see the grace coming through that too. She
Yeah.
was cut. I can just imagine how devastating in that moment that must have been for her. But she picked herself up, dust herself off, and found a way to follow through, and then to become the team captain. That's just wonderful. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had loved too that Nancy was asking, what people inspire us, what people we find to be very gritty. And, she kind of was insinuating celebrities and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But a lot of people were bringing up people in their
Oh,
own
they sure
lives.
were.
And I think it's important to realize, yeah, it's important to realize for sure that the people around us can be just as inspirational as any celebrity out there. And I think that was great. That participant who told that story about the softball team, she had said, humbly myself. And I was like, and Nancy thought it was very good too. I was like, yes, you go. You know what I mean? Like, you feel that. You get that powerful feeling. You know what I mean? I loved that. And it really made me think, like, I should think more positively about myself as well. Like, I'm sitting here saying that I'm not a very gritty person, but here I am today, and I've needed a lot of grit to get through some of the stuff I've gotten through,
Yeah, I know. I love hearing other people's stories, and also it reminds us that we're human, that everyone has their obstacles and their challenges. I guess sort of the good and the bad is that we're not alone in our challenges. Everyone has to face them. But we can kind of take strength from other people's strength. And I love celebrating other people's successes, as I know you do too.
Yes, absolutely. I think sharing these stories can really help someone persevere and grow their grit. I know it helps me all the time when I see people around me being gritty, even in everyday life. Not necessarily, becoming multi-billionaires or inventing the next great whatever. I think just regular everyday grit is so inspiring. Seeing someone struggle at work, push through, and then come up with a great solution, stuff like that. I think that we would both love to hear about how amazingly gritty our listeners have been as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree, 100%.
Michelle? You know I love stories.
I think, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, right? And I think that it would be inspiring for us as well. I mean, help us out, If you feel like sharing, I think if you wanted to leave us a nice review and include an amazing story about how grit drove you to do something awesome, go ahead and leave that in the reviews for us, and let's all inspire each other.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, grit is about finding out what drives you to overcome and achieve your goals. And I hope we've been able to light a spark in our audience and create a little grit ourselves today.
Yes, me too. I think that's all the time we have for today, Michelle, but make sure to tune in for our next episode. I will be interviewing one of our experts, Ashley Cox, on her book, Transform Your Stories. Progressive Women's Leadership Book Club is reading this book throughout July. I know that you're in that book club as well, Michelle. I can't wait to discuss the first 2 chapters with you. Yes, that's been really, really good reading so far, and I cannot wait to get some perspective right from the author herself. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and have a great day,
Michelle. Thank you. Bye, Nikolette. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Progressive Women's Leadership is passionate about providing the best tools to help you reach your fullest potential. Visit us today at progressivewomensleadership.com for access to workshops, articles, e-guides, and much more to help you further develop your skills and advance your career.